Hello, and welcome to We Live for Saturday, your favorite college football podcast. I'm your co-host, Mike, and with me today is your other co-host, John. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, man. It was a fantastic weekend.
It really was.
I just beautiful weather.
Yes,
Great day to be outside.
Fall weather.
Oh yeah, great day.
The whole thing.
Great day to be outside. Watch your team just absolutely destroy and annihilate another team. Do things that you never expected your coach would do, like pass the ball excessively. It's wow. The winds of change, I think, are coming through Minneapolis and Dinkytown, man. I really do.
That wave of optimism you're feeling is not just a reaction to the Tim Walz fans. It is because the Minnesota Golden Gophers looked pretty good over the weekend. And yes, it was weak competition before you all come for us.
No. Other teams got to celebrate and they're winning national titles. We're going to the Big Ten championship, Mike. That's what's happening.
Yes.
We destroyed Rhode Island, a middling FCS team, and that obviously means we're going to the Big Ten championship.
I mean, Kurt Signetti promised to be there, so I can get behind a Minnesota IU Big Ten title game. I like our chances.
I do too. I mean, it's gonna be tough, but I think that's great.
Tough
I think
game for sure. But
that's what the people want. I think it's Minnesota and Indiana at the Big Ten championship game. Yep. So here we go. Here it comes. Sorry, Nebraska. Sorry, Iowa. That's just the way it goes. This is what's happening now.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you apologize to Nebraska and Iowa, not to Ohio State and Penn State.
Well, I don't feel bad for them. They've been there enough times. Well, maybe not Penn State. Sorry, but okay. Sorry.
They've been there. They've won a title. They won a Big Ten title within the last decade.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. No, well,
so they can say it.
All joking aside, yes, it was a nice palate cleanser. Yes, it was an FCS team. We're not delusional. Not that delusional, anyways. So, but yeah, dude, great. I feel good. It was a nice palate cleanser, like I said. So it's nice to feel this way. Nice to see those changes. And obviously, we will talk more about that as we go on here.
It's just fun to go to a football game on a nice crisp fall day and you see the band and the dance team and the student section and everybody just having a great time. I just love this sport. I love this sport. I love experiencing it. I think every time I get to go out and watch a game is sacred. It really is.
Yeah, it's the best, man. I love it.
Awesome. All right. Should we get into some breaking news?
Let's do it. Yeah.
So we have breaking news here. According to was first reported by Adam Rittenberg of ESPN in a tweet form, because that's how news is broken these days, is via tweet. He said Northwestern is making a change as QB change as Jack Lausch will start in place of Mike Wright this week against Eastern Illinois, per coach David Braun. Northwestern is still looking for its first touchdown pass this season.
Yeah. It was a rough outing for Mike Wright. Rough. It really was, man.
It's tough. Yeah. We'll talk about it, but
for sure. But
yeah, I'll be honest, man. We said it. I said it. I didn't see it with him. At no point did I see it with him. I didn't like his resume. And then when I saw him play, I didn't like watching him play.
Well, I think the other thing too, I know that he was touted as being this quarterback who was able to run the ball very well, and I can see the speed, but he doesn't have elusive. He's not very elusive, and that's a problem. Obviously, you could see him when he had enough space. Yeah, sure, he can run upfield and he's okay, but he just doesn't have any of that wiggle, man. Not that I can see.
Speed is nice, but what kills is agility.
Yep, and I'm not seeing it. So that's tough. You can't get away from defenders in the Big Ten like that. And obviously he couldn't make it work against Duke. So
it'll be interesting. I don't know a lot about Lausch as a prospect. Will it be the same kind of QB run offense, or will they go back more to what they tried to do, what they were doing last year? Throwing the ball down the field and stuff like that. I wonder if they're going to have an identity change because of that, because of Mike Wright no longer being the quarterback. That'll be something that's interesting to track to see how Northwestern tries to adjust.
Well, I think they should. Last year obviously it worked pretty well, that identity.
Yeah,
The
they
running
also
game,
had Ben Bryant last year.
they did,
They
but
don't
they
have
still
a Ben Bryant right now.
no, and that's true. But they still have Kurtz and they still have Henning, so like they have some weapons out there. And if you're not trying to get them the ball, then it's that's a problem. And I think those are your two best players on offense, in my opinion, at this point. So
Yeah.
got to try to get your playmakers in the game. And if you can't do that, if your quarterback can't get the ball to him, then what are you going to do? So we'll see. I think it's time for a change. I don't disagree with the choice.
Yeah, no, I think he had to do it. It's looking dire already for Northwestern. We'll talk about that a little more when we get into the games. But yeah.
But there's another thing I kind of wanted to touch on is just like there's a lot that happened. This was a very interesting weekend.
Oh yeah.
Definitely some teams that took care of business, did exactly what they should have done against the opponents they were facing off against. But then there was some continued issues amongst other programs that we're not sure what's going on here, and a lot of people are a little taken aback. I think it's a little bit on the state of the Big Ten, things that we may have gotten wrong. Now, I want to preface saying this has only been 2 weeks.
Only 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So we don't know anything for sure yet.
No, and nobody does, frankly. So and if someone tries to tell you they do, they're full of it. So there's still a lot of football left to be played, but there's definitely some things that are cause for concern with certain programs. I think Oregon is one. Something better change real fast, and because it's going to be tough once they get into conference play if this is how they're playing. I'm nervous about them. Penn State had a big scare, and I think Iowa also. There's some issues.
Iowa got more than a scare.
Yep, they did. They
went down.
Yes, they did. So, the state, and this is college football. This is not unusual necessarily, but I think there's definitely some preseason takes on some of these teams that we will be retracting in a way. I think maybe the way we looked at USC and how we were kind of, which we still don't know for sure, but we were kind of down on them a little bit. Well, maybe Oregon should have been the one. Maybe we shouldn't have been so high on them. It's possible.
It's possible that we were too high on Oregon and not high enough on USC.
It's true.
That's entirely, that's something that it's possible we did. We'll see. We'll get into it when we talk about the Oregon game, but I'm flabbergasted by Oregon, man.
Me too, man.
I mean, they played 2 Idaho teams and struggled in both games.
Yep.
And that is not something I thought I would ever say about a team that I thought had national championship aspirations.
Yeah, I didn't either. And, now there's definitely been examples throughout the years of programs that just don't perform well in non-conference and then they just take off during the conference play. Northwestern's that team always. Well, Minnesota did in 2019, where they struggled in non-conference play. They won, but they struggled.
Yeah.
Ohio State when they lost to Virginia Tech in 2014, like that's like it was a big scare. People thought that was the end of it, but then they went and won it all. So we'll see. Like I said, lots of football to be played, but definitely some things that raise your eyebrow. So we'll see. We'll break it all down.
Absolutely. Yes, I'm excited to talk about all these games. It was a fascinating slate of games this week.
For sure.
I think we learned a lot more about these teams in some ways than we learned in week 1.
Agreed. Let's get into it.
All right. Sounds good. So first up, we had the Indiana Hoosiers 77, the Western Illinois Leathernecks 3. Curtis Rourke had an extremely efficient and explosive day, going 15 for 17 for 268 yards on an absurd 15.8 yards per attempt. Those are video game numbers, John.
Yeah, on freshman mode.
Yeah. He had 2 TDs and 0 picks for a QBR of 98.3. 98.3 QBR. That is not something you see very often outside of, say, a video game or like a Hall of Fame quarterback having like the the games of his life, right?
Yeah.
Justice Ellison led the way in the run game with 117 yards on 13 yards per carry and 2 TDs. Kobe Martin, Tyson Lawton, Elijah Green all averaged over 6 yards per rush respectively. So Western Illinois did virtually nothing to slow these Hoosiers down, John.
Mm-hmm.
Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper both went well over 100 yards receiving, combined for 2 TDs on top of their 268 combined yards. On D, Aiden Fisher had 9 tackles. John, 2 things can be true. Indiana played extremely well.
Mm-hmm.
That Western Illinois squad is one of the worst teams I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yeah.
They couldn't do anything on offense. They couldn't do anything on defense. They couldn't do anything on special teams. I mean, I guess they made a field goal, but that was a truly horrific team. But you know what? You know what you should do to a team that bad? You should break the scoreboard.
Yep, exactly.
And that's what they did. They broke the scoreboard.
Yep.
And Kurt Signetti is 2-0.
Amazing. And and I do know, yes, Western Illinois is. How long has it been since they've even won a game? I
think they're on a 26-game losing streak, John.
Yeah. See,
26 games.
So this is probably the worst team any Big Ten team will have
play
faced
all year.
All year.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So that says a lot. But like you said, they did exactly what they were supposed to do. And so kudos to them. Good job, Kurt Signetti. Good job, Indiana Hoosiers. This is exactly how it's supposed to go. So you did what everyone expected you to do in this situation. And it's a great, glorified scrimmage, if you will. So they were able to work on some things, and hopefully that's going to lead to some improvement down the stretch.
Yeah, a lot of guys got into the game. That's always good. Get guys experience in case you need them when conference play comes. So, yeah, I think it was a very successful outing for the Hoosiers. And, this next game for Indiana, we're not previewing this. The preview is the next podcast. But I just will say that game against UCLA, John, that's a fascinating game.
It is.
Really important for both these teams. They're both rebuilding in year 1 with a new coach. To me, that's a must-win game for both teams if they want to make a bowl game.
I agree. I think there's a little bit more pressure on UCLA.
Yes.
But they have had a whole week or 2 weeks to prepare for the game. So, at least they have that. But we'll see. Yeah, we'll get that into the preview for sure.
Yeah. All right. So congrats to the Hoosiers. Moving along, we had final in 2 overtimes. Duke Blue Devils 26 and the Northwestern Wildcats 20.
Yeah, in this game, as we said, obviously Mike Wright, not impressive. He had 20 attempts or 20 out of 36 for only 158 yards, 4.4 average, 1 interception, a 20.7 QBR. So it was
20.7 QBR. That is really bad.
It's really rough. So
yikes.
I can see how it went this way, and on the other side of the ball, or with the other team, Malik Murphy, even though he didn't look great at times, he got 242 yards and 3 touchdowns and only 1 interception. So they were able to definitely move the ball a little bit better there, but Mike Wright just is not the guy. He's not the guy. No. He, for all the reasons we already spoke about, his inability, I think, to be elusive when he is trying to run the ball. Cam Porter at the beginning opened the game with a big run, but they just couldn't finish. They couldn't finish. I thought again, I was like, all right, Cam Porter's back. This looks like this is the running back we saw, when he first showed up on the scene. And he looked dangerous, but it's like he's got a spark early in the game, and then it just fizzles out. And so I don't know if they're ever going to get a running game going consistently.
I thought Hyman looked better, man.
Yeah.
I thought Hyman looks better when he gets carries. I think he should get more of the carries than Porter does. I understand they're loyal to Porter. He's been in that program a long time, but I think Hyman has more juice. I do.
Well, I think at this point, man, they got to try. They got to try at least like splitting carries more often because this is Porter just can't seem to get it going. He breaks like
No.
one run a game and then that's it. And it's usually right at the
He's
start.
like a power back who doesn't break tackles.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, that's not a thing.
Yep. So overall, I mean, like I'd say their defense still looked okay. There was, they had some sacks. There was an interception by Theron Johnson. They were getting pressure on Malik Murphy and causing fumbles. So they were causing the problems in the backfield, but just not great. Not enough, I guess, to help out their offense. But what did help, or what hopefully was going to help them win the game, was their special teams. Their special teams were pretty impressive. With there was a muffed punt where they recovered the ball in the second quarter, and then they blocked a punt where they recovered in the third. So
I thought they were going to win when they blocked that punt.
I thought so too, but again, they just cannot finish, and that's due to the fact that unfortunately their quarterback is just not that great and not effective enough, and they have no running game. So, like, if you can't get your ball to your top wide receivers and Henning and Kurtz, and your running games can't get going, well then it's just never going to work for you. So they got to try something else. I think putting in Lausch is going to help. It can't hurt. Let's just put it that way. In my opinion. So, unfortunately, Northwestern just wasn't able to put it together. It looked like the ball was going to bounce their way with some of these turnovers, but unfortunately, their offense just couldn't get it done.
Yeah, how much do you think they regret running Brendan Sullivan off?
I think that was a bad idea.
That was a bad decision, huh?
Yep. It really was.
Maybe the players you have sometimes are better than the players you portal.
Yep.
Is a lesson for coaches.
Well, you called it, man. You called it at the beginning of the season before any of this started about Mike Wright.
I didn't buy the Mike Wright thing. I didn't buy his resume. I didn't like what I saw from him, watching him play, going back and looking at what he did, what he's done in the past, and he did the same stuff against Northwestern. He's not very accurate. He's not very elusive. He doesn't really do anything particularly well.
No. I don't think so either. He shows flashes from time to time, but he is just insanely inconsistent, and it's never enough. So yeah, poor decision making as well. Oof. Yeah. Well, hopefully Lausch can give them the juice they need, and they can, maybe get back to being a threat in the Big Ten, because right now they don't look like they'll be much competition.
No, they look like a team that's going to lose a lot of games unless something changes real fast. But you know what? Bronze had the magic pixie dust before, so I'm not going to count them out yet.
Well, they didn't look great at the beginning of the season last year either.
Nope.
You're right.
They did not.
Nope.
All right, moving right along. We have the Ohio State Buckeyes, 56. The Western Michigan Broncos, 0. So, John, a week after Western Michigan battled Wisconsin deep into the fourth quarter, the Broncos went down in far more decisive fashion to the Buckeyes.
Yeah.
Let's talk stats first, just because of how ridiculous they were. Will Howard was 18 for 26 for 292 yards, 11.2 yards per attempt, a TD, and 0 picks. That is a great day at the office. After playing poorly last week, running back Quinshon Judkins had over 100 yards rushing on just 9 carries for 12 yards per carry and 2 TDs. So it was nice to see Judkins bounce back and play a lot better than he did last week in his first outing with the Scarlet and Gray. Frosh phenom Jeremiah Smith continues to dominate with 5 grabs for 119 yards. Those are absurdly efficient numbers. I mean, that guy, he's like friend of the pod, Phil, put it best. He doesn't look like a college freshman who just came in. He looks like a guy from the NFL who's coming back to visit.
He really does. It really does. It's like they sent him down to the minors just to get some more, more experience, but he's been playing for a while or to heal up.
But he's just a ringer playing. Yeah.
Yeah.
They also got Emeka Egbuka at a nice day with 5 catches for 98 yards. So I'm glad the Buckeyes haven't forgotten about their preseason All-American just because their Frosh phenom is so good.
Yeah.
And the defense was even better. The Buckeyes defensive tackle Ty Hamilton had 4 tackles, including a half sack and a half tackle for loss. Secondary locked down the receivers, and that front 7 held Western Michigan to 0.9 yards per rush. Not even a single yard per rushing attempt for Western Michigan. That is brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So this was an amazing performance for the Buckeyes. They announced themselves as the best team in the Big Ten, I would say, after the struggles of fellow contenders Michigan, Penn State, and Oregon.
Yeah, I agree.
We could wax philosophical all day about them, but I don't know what else to say about the Buckeyes except for that they're clicking on all cylinders and they look like who we thought they were, which is the best team in the country.
Yeah. Obviously, I know there could be arguments made for USC right now, and because they played LSU, but
yeah,
as of right now, I'm not seeing anything that's giving me any concern with Ohio State, which is kind of what we thought at the beginning of the season, picking them to win the Big Ten championship game. So I think I'm still on that thought process. That's where I'm going to stay for now, unless something changes. But yeah, man, not much else to say.
And you know what? Here's what I'll say. I'll say so far, Will Howard is better than we thought he was.
Yep.
People acted like Will Howard was this big step down. People even said he was going to lose his job at K-State to Avery Johnson, who, by the way, is not throwing the ball so well this year. But the guy who is throwing the ball really well this year is Will Howard.
Yep.
So I think I don't know. I'm not ready to say he's fully the real deal until I see him play against better competition. But so far, the returns are impressive.
Yeah. Well, even you and I might be able to score a touchdown with those weapons at wide receiver. So,
Oh, yeah. Seriously, I'm sure we could get out. Can you imagine having that on like your flag football team or something? I once played on a flag football team with two guys who played major conference college football. And it was so funny because it was the secondary, because the one guy had started at Wazoo and the other guy had started at Texas. I'm not going to say their names because I'm not dating myself, because they're older than we are. I was younger than them when I was playing with them.
Yeah.
And then there was the white guy from Minnesota.
Yeah.
So it was funny. Teams would always test me. I did well, but teams would always test me right away because those guys just had looked the part a little more than I did.
Sure.
All right, moving on to our next game. We had number 3 Texas 31, number 10 Michigan 12.
Oof. This is rough. This game, from what I was able to see, it was just this is not the same Michigan team that we saw last year.
This is not the same Michigan team. No. That's the first thing I wrote down when I was taking notes watching this game.
I am very concerned at quarterback. I think that, let's just say this. Like, I'll start with this. Texas is legit. Texas is for sure going to be in the college football playoff, as they should be. This is a national title contender. Quinn Ewers was 24 for 36, 246 yards.
He's special.
Like 89.6 QBR. He's very special. Now, Michigan, dude, I just don't know what to say. I don't know what to say. And this running game isn't showing up either. Donovan Edwards had 8 carries for 41 yards. 12-yard run was his longest. Mullings had 6 carries for 25. Like, sure, Edwards averaged about 5.1 yards, but that's just not that for him and what our expectations are for him and this offensive line be able to create the holes for him. They're not showing up. They're just not.
Yeah.
So Michigan's offense is in trouble. And their defense, I think it's okay, but it didn't look fantastic. And their defensive line, which is is supposed to be their best unit on the field, didn't really show up in the way they're supposed to, in my opinion.
The defensive line has not been, they've been a shadow of what I expected them to be. With the 2-star D tackles, Graham and Grant right in the middle there.
Yep.
I expected them to just wreck teams like they did last year.
Yep.
And they are not just wrecking teams. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So I don't know what the deal is. And I thought maybe it was the first game they just weren't motivated to play against Fresno State, which sometimes happens. You're not as motivated when you're a big favorite and all that kind of stuff. But against Texas, man, there's no lack of motivation there. That's not a thing. So what we're seeing is real on-field struggles
Yep.
from a defensive front that I thought was going to be unblockable.
I thought so too. I thought they were going to be unblockable. I thought their offense was at least going to be able to run the ball. They had 82 yards total, which is
Rushing.
Yeah, which
that's
is
really bad.
That's nuts. And only
crazy.
204 yards passing with a QBR rating of 47.6.
That's rough.
Yeah. I mean, we knew there was going to be a changeover going into this with obviously a new head coach and a lot of players leaving, but this could be more of a rebuild than what people were anticipating. I thought they were just going to reload, but it
absolutely
doesn't
like Michigan does. Like Michigan generally does.
Yeah.
Like Jim Harbaugh and Lloyd Carr Michigan teams always did. They just reloaded.
Yep.
But maybe Sharon Moore doesn't have this thing ready for a reload. Maybe that's not where we're at. Maybe it's going to be a real rebuild.
It's possible, man. Texas just won in convincing, dominant fashion.
Michigan was not competitive in this game. They scored. Their touchdown came with like 2 minutes left in the game.
Yeah.
So it was really like 31 to what? I mean, like 31 to 5? No, not 5, but 6.
Yeah. And did they miss the extra point? Because
they must have gone for 2.
Yeah. You're right. Yeah.
They must have gone for 2.
I see it. Yep.
Yeah,
dude. So it was pretty rough. I don't know what to say. This does not look like a top 10 team at all.
No.
So this could be a long season for Michigan fans, and this is the first time they probably have to feel that. How many was it? 26 games win streak or something like that?
Yeah, it was a 26 game win streak for Michigan.
Yeah, so
it's crazy.
It's pretty crazy. So be proud of that. But like this happens. This happens. And as good as Michigan is, you still don't recruit on the same level as Ohio State. And
no,
so that's just the way it is. I know. Sorry, Wolverine fans, but that's just the reality.
Well, here's what I wonder, though, John. Is it possible that as he gets healthy, that Jack Tuttle gets back into this QB competition?
That's the dude.
That could change everything. He's a better thrower than Davis Warren, isn't he?
Absolutely.
He's got to be.
Tuttle has been. He's a journeyman, and this guy, in my opinion, has pulled off some. Remember when he beat Wisconsin, a good Wisconsin defense.
Yes.
With Indiana.
Yeah.
That was incredible. And that's because of Jack Tuttle. He won that game. So I think if he gets healthy and they get him out there, they might be able to do some things and be able to be more competitive. But I still don't see them. Again, at this point, this stage of the game. It looks like there's a lot more issues too, obviously, with the defensive side of the ball. So could be a problem.
Yeah, it was just not a game. It wasn't competitive.
No,
I mean, it was just a series of Texas highlights and Michigan futility. It was truly a lopsided game. Yes,
it was. Yeah, Michigan wasn't in that at all. Not for one moment.
No. All right. Moving on. We had the Oregon Ducks 37, the Boise State Broncos 34.
Dude. I'm just going to state this right off the bat, and I might have some Ducks fans come after me. But I'm not sure the better team won this game.
Yeah.
I'm really not sure.
That's fair to say. It was a very tightly contested game.
Yeah. I think, Oregon's special teams obviously won them the game, even though that one kick return, that 100-yard kick return, does not look like a touchdown to me. The returner dropped the ball before he crossed the goal line.
Yeah, but his teammate recovered in the end zone.
He did. Okay.
So even if he dropped it,
you're right.
No, because that's what I thought first too, and it was somebody in our chat who called me on it. It was like, no, because I was doing the thing when I was watching Oregon Boise State where I was fighting to stay awake after a big day of college football.
Same.
Like I got up early, got my workout in. We had an 11 a.m. game, so everything's super early to get ready for that. And I was like on my couch, like trying to keep my eyes open watching that game. So I had to go back and rewatch that game, like the main parts of that game on Sunday. because I couldn't remember.
Yeah, I should have gone back through it more in depth. I'm sorry. I saw that and I was and that's what I remembered. But you're right. Yeah. But either way, still full props to their special teams. They definitely showed up. They also had a punt return for a touchdown with Tez Johnson, which was 85 yards, which is incredible. So he's absolutely a playmaker. He's electric.
Yeah, but they needed They needed a punt return touchdown, John, and a kick return touchdown. Yep. They needed both to win this game by 3.
Yes. So that's pretty crazy against Boise State. And that's
Boise State.
Now,
who's a very good Mountain West team, but is still a Mountain West team.
Yes, exactly. And I like we talked before, I feel like our expectations of what we thought USC was going to be, struggling on the lines of scrimmage, was going to be their problem, which it might still be that way, but it sure looks like Oregon is that team right now. And I'm not convinced about their offensive line, their defensive line. Boise State was able to run on them all day. Now, given
Boise State ran all over them. Over them.
Janty is like probably the best running back in the country at this point in time.
Yeah, he's incredible, but he still ran for nearly 200 yards on 8 yards a carry.
Yes.
Those are absurd numbers to give up to an opposing running back. That's a huge red flag no matter how good Janty is.
Yeah. No,
huge
absolutely.
Red flag for Oregon to give that up.
Well, and here's the other thing that's crazy to me is Maddox Madsen, the Boise State quarterback, had a higher QBR rating than Dylan Gabriel. Maddox
he had a pretty mediocre day too.
Yeah, 148 yards, 17 out of 40, and then 148 yards, 3.7 average, 1 TD, and that's it.
Yeah, not great.
No, and Dylan Gabriel had 18 completions out of 21, 243 yards, and 11.6, 2 TDs. So maybe this is messed up here. I don't know. That doesn't seem right. But I'm looking at ESPN. Anyway, I don't think that's right. So my bad. I'm looking at the wrong stats, or they put up the wrong stats. So moving on, though, I think that there was a lot of issues with Dylan Gabriel making some poor decisions throughout the game. I know that he was still able to connect with Stewart, what seemed to be his main target throughout the game, and that was it. And he was able to have some solid success and some long receptions. But I just don't think this offensive line is up to the task, man. There were sacks, there were pressures. They can't run the ball at all, in my opinion. From what I was able to see, it was pretty anemic.
They didn't run the ball that well against Idaho either.
Nope. Only, let's see, Jordan James had 102 yards on 17 carries.
Which is fine, but it's just fine. It's not great.
Yeah.
Against a team, when you're a physically superior team, you think you would do more than that.
Yep.
I will say about Madsen, even though he had a mediocre day overall, he made some clutch throws when they needed
him. Yes, he did.
So I'll give him credit for that. Boise State had the lead at half, and it felt like they deserved to have the lead at half.
Yes, they did.
The fact they didn't get a touchdown before the half is probably the difference in the game. Oregon needed that red zone stop, and they got it.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, it was between that and the kick and the punt return. How Oregon, it really took moving mountains for Oregon to win this game. We can't stress enough how unlikely really it was that Oregon would win this game.
Well, and I just saw so many broken coverages downfield too.
That's the thing, man. Their secondary played really poorly.
Well, their entire defense.
That was one of the first things I wrote down was big gaps in the Oregon secondary for Boise to exploit. That it was just that there were if Madsen was more accurate, he could have done a lot better.
Yep. So their defensive line, their secondary, it just looks like that defense all around right now anyways is very unimpressive.
And don't forget, Boise also missed the long field goal attempt late in the third quarter. So if they make that, we're going to OT. It's not even the Ducks winning.
Yep. If it wasn't for their special teams, I think Oregon loses this game.
Yeah. Oh, they're without the 2 return touchdowns, they needed both of them.
Yep.
They needed both of them.
Yep.
And that's crazy that's what you needed to beat Boise State if you're a national title contender. I don't know, man. I've gone from thinking that Oregon, Ohio State was the game of the year in the Big Ten to thinking that Ohio State's going to ride into Eugene and crush the Ducks.
I think they're absolutely going to do that at this point in time. I agree.
I mean, we've got about a month until then, so a lot can change.
It
Ducks,
can.
Oregon has plenty of time to get better. I'm not saying for sure this is going to happen, but the way they're playing right now, the way Oregon's playing, and right now the way Ohio State's playing, that would not be a competitive football game, I don't believe.
Yeah, I agree. So lots to fix there in Eugene.
I mean, it's hard. It's hard to believe they're struggling this much. And you know what? It's time. Is it time for us to be more critical of Dan Lanning?
I mean,
is it? Because he has this unbelievably talented team that's been recruiting at a top 5 level and a top 3 level in the transfer portal. He got all the pieces he wanted. He got to put it together exactly the way he wanted it.
Mm-hmm.
And he's still having these struggles. So at what point do we hold Dan Lanning responsible?
I'll give him one more game at this point. But if this continues another week, yeah, man. I mean, it's you got to look at the coaching and seeing what's going on here, because you're right. I mean, he spent all this money getting all these superstars.
All this money. Oregon spent so much money.
And it's not coming together.
Not at all.
Mm-mm.
Which is really, really frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Should we move along?
Yes.
Next up, we have number 8, Penn State 34, Bowling Green 27.
Good. They almost got Bowling Greened.
They almost got Bowling Greened. They really and truly almost got Bowling Green. I'm going to start with the good for Bowling Green first. Connor Bazelak, quarterback for Bowling Green. Man, that's a gutsy player right there. Yeah. He did some things. That opening touchdown drive was perfect. I mean, it was perfection. He was on point. And you know what else? Bowling Green tight end Harold Fannin. Penn State couldn't cover him.
Mm-hmm.
They could not stay with him.
No.
They didn't have anybody in that vaunted defense. They didn't have anybody who could keep up with Bowling Green's tight end. And yeah, Fannin looks like he should. I don't know how he got to Bowling Green. He clearly should be in a better place. That guy's going to play on Sundays. Like, don't get me wrong. But still, for him to go nuts the way he did. I mean, then you had the bad third down drop for Penn State by Evans that stopped a drive and set Bowling Green up for its next scoring drive. And then Bowling Green went right through the Penn State defense again to go up 17-7. So finally, Penn State wakes up. They torch Bowling Green on a few chunk plays, cut it to 17-14. But then Bowling Green gashed Penn State up the middle for a long touchdown run. And yeah, dude, it was, and Penn State missed opportunities. The 4th and 5 conversion by Penn State at the end of the third quarter should have been huge, but Aller threw a pick to negate it right after. And then they had a Tony Rojas pick with 6 minutes left and still gave the ball back within 2 minutes and needed Zach Wheatley to come here 2 minutes later and make a pick of his own before Bowling Green ran out of chances and the Nick Singleton TD run sealed it. Penn State outgained Bowling Green 438 to 375. So that number is fairly close considering this is an average MAC team Penn State was playing. Mm-hmm. That's like a pretty close total yardage total. That's just about who got more possessions almost and that kind of thing. Bowling Green was somewhat effective running the ball with 4.7 yards per rush. But the difference in this game, I thought, was that the Penn State rushing attack averaged over 6 yards per carry. The passing game was effective for both teams, although Penn State threw the ball more explosively and less often. But it was that Penn State running attack that they leaned on that won them this game.
Yeah.
Bowling Green actually ran several plays more than Penn State in this game, which surprised me and shows how closely this was contested. And Penn State won the turnover battle 2-1, or else they probably end up in overtime if they don't have that edge. So Penn State played this entire game on the proverbial razor's edge. Bazelak for Bowling Green was just incredible. 25 for 39, just 6.5 yards per attempt, but he had two TDs, 2 picks for a QBR of 80.9. So that was considering how man they were, that was a really impressive performance, I thought. And then Harold Fannin, man, I said him before, but 11 catches, 137 yards. Penn State could not cover him. No matter what he did, he was open. It was crazy. And then Malcolm Johnson had a nice day at wide receiver with 81 yards and a touchdown. So Drew Aller was fine, 13 of 20, 204 and 2 TDs, but he did throw a costly pick and his QBR was only 65.5. So you could argue Aller was outplayed by Bazelak. And Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen, like we said, they both ran well. They went over 100 yards, or else Penn State doesn't win that game. And thank you and thank God for Tyler Warren, the tight end, having 146 yards receiving to offset Harold Fannin for Bowling Green. But I have questions about this defense, John. I have questions about Drew Aller. Most importantly, who's going to catch passes for Penn State this year? Because Tyler Warren can't do everything as the tight end spot.
Yeah.
Who's going to do it? They didn't have any production, hardly, from the wide receiver position in this game. How does that even happen?
And that was the thing last year. Like, they had Lambert, but like now they have no one. And that was what they were supposed to fix this year.
That's what Fleming was supposed to fix. But through 2 games, he's got 0 catches.
Yeah. So this sounds like more of the same going on in Happy Valley. And this is a problem because they're going to just run into the same issues. It's going to be the same kind of play throughout the season. And Penn State fans will come away, sure, like, all right, well, I'm sure they'll still have a winning season, of course, because they're Penn State. But I'm afraid you're just going to see more of the same in State College. I think that
it's one game. It's one game.
It's true.
But it is an alarming game. Yes,
true. But I hope that's not the case, but it seems to be trending that way. And if it does end up that way again, it's James Franklin. That's just the way it is.
Because James Franklin's had 7 offensive coordinators, and the one constant is him.
Yep, exactly.
So if it doesn't work, and yesterday things didn't work, the thing that was amazing to me, John, was that the struggles. We both like Tom Allen, but the struggles came on defense. They got exposed.
Yeah.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think Tom Allen's a great coach, but it's also true that his players at Indiana did not always play hard for him.
Yeah.
They did not always show up. And I felt like they didn't show up to some extent on defense yesterday. And the fact that Tom Allen wasn't able sufficiently to motivate his defense yesterday worries me a little bit going forward. I didn't think they were giving it their all. I didn't think they were clicking on all cylinders. And Tom Allen, if he's going to fix this defense, he's got to fix it soon. If Penn State's going to improve enough to contend for a Big Ten title, and a playoff berth.
Yep. It's a little scary, but like we said, there was a number of teams this week. So they got to fix things. That's what the non-conference is for. And hopefully we can see some improvement here because it just looked like more of the same this last week with James Franklin.
It really did. It made me kind of worried about them, John, for real. It made me, it's one game. We're probably overreacting, right?
Yeah.
But it did feel a lot like when Scott Frost kept saying it was always the same movie.
Yeah.
This feels like the same Penn State movie.
Yep.
Where the teams just has all the potential and the talent in the world, but they just don't execute consistently enough on either side of the ball.
Yeah. That's what I'm afraid of, but you're right. We're still in overreaction season. So, we're going to pump the brakes a little bit, but if I were a Penn State fan, I'd be concerned for sure. And I think they have the right to be at this point, but
yeah,
give it a little bit more time. We'll see. Maybe they'll figure themselves out and things will get better. They better get better.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Next up, we had the number 13 USC Trojans 48, the Utah State Aggies 0. I don't know what to say about this game, John. USC was fantastic. Miller Moss was a rock solid 21 for 30 for 7.6 yards per attempt and a TD. Woody Marks went over 100 yards rushing, so that was good to see on 8 yards a carry, which was impressive. Joyner also had a nice night running the ball. Lake McCree had a good day catching the ball with 4 for 81. Miller Moss really spread the ball around, though, so did the backup Maeva in garbage time. 14 USC players recorded a catch. Shout out to Easton Mascarenas Arnold, who recorded an interception, and Eric Gentry, who had 7 tackles, a sack, and 1.5 tackles for loss for this defense that, again, recorded a shutout and really showed up. And John, here's what I'll say. Here's what I think we should spend our USC time talking about. Is USC the second best team in the Big Ten? Because I think they deserve, the way they're playing right now, I think they deserve to be ranked in the top 10. I'm impressed what they've done so far. They've exceeded my expectations. USC looks like the team we thought Oregon was, and Oregon looks like the team we thought USC was.
Exactly.
So far.
Yep. No, I agree. They look competent. They look like they have their stuff together. It's a night and day difference so far from what you can tell defensively. They look like they're where they should be. They look disciplined, and they look dangerous. They have. This last week was not a massive test, but like we've talked about previously with Indiana and what we're going to talk about probably with another team or two here, is they took care of business. They did exactly what they should do against a team that a far, weaker opponent. And so I'm impressed. Their offense still is clicking. I think at this time I would definitely make them the second best team in the Big Ten behind Ohio State.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's fair.
Yeah. I think that's totally fair.
Yep. Miller Moss is the truth, man. He really is. And the receivers are incredible. They're electric. And I do want to see Woody Marks, run up against some better defensive linemen, and which we will see eventually.
Yep, we will.
We'll see if any Big Ten defenses can make them one-dimensional. But right now, they look pretty balanced too.
Yeah. No, USC, they look like the real deal. And they're definitely a team. You have my attention, USC.
Sure.
I'm really curious to see where it goes from here.
Absolutely.
All right. Next up, we have an upset, John. Illinois 23, number 19, the Illinois Illini 23, excuse me. The Kansas number 19 Kansas Jayhawks 17.
Yeah.
This was a back and forth, entertaining, knockdown, drag out kind of battle. This was exactly the kind of game Illinois wanted to play.
Yep.
And they successfully dictated terms to the Jayhawks, who would rather play a higher scoring, more up tempo, more finesse kind of brand of football. But it was not to be, as Illinois controlled the game, I would say, from the pick 6 on.
Yep.
Caden Fagan scored on a 1-yard run with 9:34 to go. David Alano added a 43-yard field goal with 58 seconds left, and Illinois rallied to beat Kansas 23-17. It was the first time Illinois had beaten a ranked non-conference opponent at home since 2011.
Whoa.
And they also avenged last year's loss to Kansas.
Yep.
Fagan scored after Luke Altmaier found Pat Bryant for 37 and 28-yard completions on the 8-play, 80-yard drive. And the win gives Illinois coach Brett Bielema a 20-19 record in his 4 years in charge of the Illini. Daniel scrambled, found a wide-open Lawrence Arnold in the end zone for a 13-yard TD pass that gave the Jayhawks a 17-13 lead with 4:57 to go in the third quarter. But Illinois did not panic when they lost the lead. They methodically regained the lead on that key touchdown drive. Luke Altmaier was up and down, if we're being honest, right? But when he needed to make the plays, he made the plays with the help of his sure-handed receivers. Altmaier was 16 of 25 for 192 yards, 7.7 yards per attempt. QBR of just 70.7. So not a great day for Altmaier, but it was good enough to win. They really couldn't run the ball on Kansas. Illinois couldn't, which surprised me a lot. Fagan had just 40 yards on 2.5 yards per carry and a TD. As a team, Illinois averaged just 2.3 yards per carry. So that's something Bielema will need to improve as Illinois gets into conference play. They can't. That's not going to be a recipe for success for them to run the ball at such a poor clip, I don't think.
Yeah.
Wide receiver Zachary Franklin, John. He was the star. 9 catches, 99 yards, including that one-handed over-the-shoulder catch. Or maybe it was the right arm. No, it was the left. One-handed over-the-shoulder catch was just absurd, and he made it look easy. He's a legit number 1 Big Ten wide receiver, in my opinion. We wondered if Illinois had one. Well, they do, and it's Franklin.
Yep.
And Pat Bryant looks like a decent number 2 receiver. So that's good to see also. Story of the day was the Illini defense, though, John. Jalen Daniels completed just 18 to 32 passes for 4.4 yards per attempt. Woof. That is brutal. He also had 2 TDs, but threw 3 picks. So Illinois got run on a bit again, which is a worry. That was the strength of the Kansas attack. Devin Neal had a great day with 14 carries on 7.2 yards per carry. Daniel Highshaw had success too. I was surprised that Illinois didn't do a better job slowing down the Kansas running game, but Illinois did a great job against the passing game, and they bent, but they didn't break. Yeah. And that was good enough for today. So this was a big win for Brett Bielema, John. What did you think about this one?
I mean, we've been saying it when it comes to Brett Bielema. Like, he's not down and out for long. This is an excellent coach, especially in this conference, and he does know how to force you into playing his game, and he did that. He made Kotelnicki have to adjust, or not Kotelnicki. I'm still thinking he's at Kansas. He made Kansas's offense have to adjust, and
Lance Leipold had to adjust.
Yes, thank you. And he just did what he did, man. It was a drag down rock fight. They drug him in the mud, and their defense showed up, which is great to see that comeback this year. In a big way. After losing Ryan Walters last year, that definitely shook him up a little bit. But now I'm seeing some promise, man. I think Luke Altmaier, is always going to be, an average to maybe a slightly above average quarterback, depending on the game. But he does just enough. I like their running game still. I know they weren't super effective, but I think that now that they have wide receiver, a couple solid targets, which they always seem to find, like at least one.
Oh, yeah. Like Illinois grows them on trees, man, when it comes to receivers. Them and Maryland. They never have. I don't know how the wide receiver tree never goes runs dry for those programs for some reason.
It's insane to me because I just don't see, when I think of Illinois, I'm thinking of a running team, which they generally are. I don't think of these wide receivers, but yet they continue to pop up and want to play for Brett Bielema. But that's Brett. That's what he does, man. He finds those people and he develops them really well. I'm not surprised to see them bounce back and be able to win this game. I think that Illinois is going to be dangerous this year. I really do. I know people like to count them out early because of just the fact that they're Illinois. They're not a helmet school. And they've been mediocre, and Brett Bielema obviously hasn't had a ton of success there, but he's dealing with a lot less talent at this level than he did at places like Wisconsin. So I think what he's doing now is you're going to see consistently from Brett Bielema teams that he'll have some really high years and maybe some low years where he's going to be rebuilding, but he's always going to rebuild. And
he's always a tough out.
Yes.
Always makes it hard.
Yep.
You're never going to just show up and take it from him.
Yep.
You're going to have to earn it for sure. So he's, is it next week it's 2 weeks that Nebraska and Illinois play, right?
Yep.
That's going to be one circled for me on the calendar as one I need to check out.
Yeah. I think that's going to be a battle.
Oh,
I don't
that's
think
going to be a great game.
Oh yeah, I don't think Nebraska can count that as a win right now.
No,
it's a little bit more of a toss-up looking to me.
Coin flip for sure.
Yeah. Just knowing Brett Bielema and how he has his players ready to go, I think it's going to be close. In my opinion, it's going to be a great game. I'm looking forward to that one for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to another upset, John.
Mm-hmm.
We had the Iowa State Cyclones 20, the number 21 Iowa Hawkeyes 19.
This was this is back and forth. This was a close game.
It was a close game. This was so close. It was uncomfortable watching it, even though I didn't have a rooting interest. I was just like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah, it was wild. And I'll say, let's just start with, I think defensively for Iowa, I think they did a great job as they usually do. They were
absolutely
solid.
They held them to 20 points.
Yep. Yeah. They Rocco Becht, who is a good quarterback. I think he did a solid job with 23 completions out of 35 attempts, 272 yards, 7.8 average, 2 TDs, 1 interception with a QBR rating of 66.4, which is good. It's really good, but they kept their running game in check. They only Iowa State was only able to get 89 yards total rushing. So that defensive line did exactly what we expected them to do. And Iowa's defense was also able to get some interceptions and just, cause a lot of havoc. And I think Jay Higgins, especially, he was all over the place. The only thing that I saw defensively in the second half is that they came out a little flat, and the secondary, like, it was odd. Like, the safeties seemed like they were out of position sometimes, which was weird. Like, because they didn't do that in the first half, and then the second half, it was like they got a little lazy, and they were a little all over the place. I'm not sure why that is. It just didn't look like they were together in sync. So, but yeah, I defense overall did exactly what we expect them to do. They're solid. I expect that to continue. Now, on the offensive side of the ball, I'm going to stay with the positive here, and we're going to talk about Caleb frickin' Johnson, who had an outstanding game. I mean, his numbers are phenomenal. He had, Caleb Johnson had 25 carries for 187 yards, 7.5 average, 2 TDs, a 54 long run. This guy, he looks legit.
It's a nice day at the office.
Yeah, a great day at the office. A lot to be excited about with him. Moulton, not so much. LaShawn Williams, not so much. But obviously, Johnson is the bell cow, so that's who they're going with.
Yes.
But then there's the other side of this whole thing, and this is pretty ugly. I don't think Cade McNamara is the guy, dude. I'm not sure. It's obviously there's more time, but this was brutal. His stats, he was 13 for 29, 99 yards, 3.4 average, 2 interceptions, a 9.7 QBR.
Those are Deacon Hill numbers, John.
I was gonna say, did Deacon Hill come back? He just lost some weight, but he's doing the same thing. He's back. This is brutal, man. This is everything Iowa fans were afraid of.
Yeah.
The silver lining, obviously, you've got Caleb Johnson. You've got a solid running back now that you can lean on. But without that passing game, this could be bad. It could be really bad, because if they take away Caleb Johnson, you got nothing. And with those wide receivers being not great, and even Lachey and Estrenga didn't look fantastic in this game.
Right.
And they don't have wide receivers that are true threats. I mean, we talked about it in the offseason about how Iowa recruits at a G5 level, or has been recruiting at a G5 level for wide receiver, and it's showing
for a long time now.
Yeah, for a long time. And I think
they were hoping the Ohio State transfer was going to work out, but so far he hasn't.
Yep. I think Iowa is starting to see, because you can see it on Twitter, that Brian Ferentz may not have been the reason that this offense is what it is.
No, of course not. Of course it wasn't Brian Ferentz. Of course it was always Kirk. It's Kirk's team.
Yep.
Of course the offense was always Kirk. Kirk is an offensive guy. Mm-hmm. He had his fingerprints all over the offense. Yes, of course it wasn't just Brian Ferentz. It was always Kirk Ferentz. It's Kirk Ferentz's offense.
Yeah, and his son was a sacrificial lamb, which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's what I mean, not to say, who knows, maybe the old Cade McNamara comes back and this is a rivalry game, and things change and he gets better. But I mean, he struggled with Illinois State until towards the end of the game. The offensive line wasn't blocking the way I thought they were going to either. So there's problems on the offensive
Cade's
side.
played one good half in 2 games.
Yeah. One.
And that's not great. That's not great. You want him to be more consistent than that.
And it was against Illinois State. So that's against a true power conference foe. Like this was a really poor performance. And I think that there's things to worry about in Iowa City. And I think the fans have the right to be a little upset right now. I know I would be, because this just seems like more of the same. And if this continues, it's going to be another long season. Yes, their defense and their special teams, of course, can continue to win them games, and they could have a winning record.
They'll win games.
Yep, and they could end with a winning record, but the offensive side of the ball, other than the run game, I guess, just is probably going to look exactly the same as last year.
Yeah, but Iowa wasn't talking about going to a bowl game, John. They were talking about going to the playoff.
Yeah.
So for them to lose this early to Iowa State this way is a rude awakening from where they thought they were to where they are right now.
Yeah. And let's be honest, losing to a Big 12 team, no, it's not an FCS opponent. No, it's not a G5, but like Big 12 team, it's a lower level conference. It just is right now. Like that's the truth. I'm not trying to like talk too much crap on the Big 12, but
the Big 12 is still pretty competitive.
They are, but
I would say that it's still Iowa State is still a decent group of four, or not group of four, power four kind of team. I wouldn't be that down on the Cyclones at this point. But I hear what you're saying. And here's what alarms me, right? So what does Kirk Ferentz want to do? He wants to run the ball. Check. He ran the ball. Mm-hmm. He wants to stop the run. Check. He stopped the run. Still lost. Still lost. Because that passing offense is so anemic that even with a really good day from his number one running back, it wasn't enough to carry him to victory. And I think that's what's alarming, is that it's one thing if it's a day you couldn't run the ball. Okay, well, some days the running game doesn't work as well. You can come back next week and run the ball better. They ran the ball. They ran the ball the way they wanted to run the ball. Yeah. And they still didn't do anything to open up the passing game for them.
Yep.
And that's alarming, I think, if you're an Iowa fan.
Cade he was not accurate at all.
No.
And in some ways, I can't really even blame the receivers entirely, because he was just all over the field, man. He was throwing ducks, especially the second half.
Oh yeah, he looked like he got tight when it got close.
Yep. So I don't know what's going on.
Let's also remember, Iowa was up 13-0 at half.
Yeah.
I mean, Iowa was in control of this game. For them to lose is not just a loss; it was a collapse.
Yep. It sure looked like it. So yeah, man, I'm not sure what's going on there. I think Brendan Sullivan might be getting the start. Maybe not next week, but I think he could definitely be starting at some point.
He's going to save him for Minnesota and then spring him on us.
Watch, and then all
anybody.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see him going that route. I hope PJ's ready for that. I hope PJ knows. I'm sure he is. I'm sure he's taking the temperature. I'm sure he knows he could see that if that happens. Because it'll be. To me, if you're making the move to Sullivan, you should do it this week and give him a chance against a group of 5 team before he has to get thrown into the fire against a Big 10 team. But the problem with Sullivan, and you know why, the reason Kirk doesn't want to play him is because he throws picks. Mm-hmm. But if Cade's going to throw picks too, but Sullivan also makes plays downfield.
Yeah.
So if Cade isn't going to make the plays downfield and he's going to throw picks too, then at what point do you go to Sullivan?
I think they'll probably trot out Cade for the first half, see how he does, and if it's more of the same, Sullivan will finish the game next week. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. I think Cade will probably play better. It's a lower division team.
Yeah, it's Troy, so yeah. But they might get him in there. If they get up by a lot, who knows? Maybe they'll give him some experience. But I think they need to at this point. They need to make sure Sullivan is ready to go too.
Yeah. I really thought Iowa was going to win this game convincingly.
Yeah, so did I.
I did not think it was going to be, I didn't think they were even going to be necessarily in danger of losing.
I thought it was going to be a low scoring game, but I thought Iowa was going to be in control the entire time.
And they were for the first half.
Yeah.
And then Iowa State just flipped a switch and Iowa couldn't adjust.
Yep.
It was a strange, exciting game, though. Really exciting game. I mean, you go down to the walk-off field goal win. That's exciting, and that's rough for Iowa psychologically.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, should we move on?
Yes, let's do it.
Next up, we have the Minnesota Golden Gophers 48, the Rhode Island Rams 0. Gophers started a little slow, leading just 3-0 after one quarter. But starting right away in the second quarter, Minnesota started to pour it on. And after that, it was smooth sailing. Max Brosmer was fantastic completing 24 of 30 passes for 271 yards on 9 yards per attempt with 2 TDs and 0 picks. Did I mention, John, that his receivers had 4 obvious drops? So he could have been easily 28 for 30 for well over 300 yards. Because a couple of those drops were downfield long passes.
And one was in the end
zone. That's worth
zone.
mentioning. One of them was a touchdown also. That's worth mentioning because the Minnesota signal caller was lights out against Rhode Island. And I saw he ranked, I think they did the rating for all the QBs in the country, and they ranked Brosmer 5th in the whole country for his performance this week.
Yeah.
Running back Darius Taylor at 64 yards rushing and a TD on a workman-like 4.6 yards per carry. Marcus Major struggled in his carries, but other than that, everybody played well, I thought. Gophers once again spread the ball around with Elijah Spencer, Darius Taylor, Daniel Jackson, Lemecki Brockington, and Christian Driver all making significant plays. I believe when we get into conference play, you will see the Gophers focus more on getting the ball to Daniel Jackson more often. But in these non-conference games, I think it's important to develop your whole receiving core, and Fleck is doing a great job of that as Gophers hit 12 different receivers over the course of the game. The real story was the defense, though, John. Nickelback Jack Henderson had a pick 6, and the Gophers D rolled in this game. Devin Eastern had a sack and 1.5 tackles for loss, and that doesn't tell half the story of the way he dominated this game. I mean, he was living in the backfield and just blowing things up from that defensive tackle spot, which was exciting to see. And Frosh, Drake Lindsay even threw a TD pass in garbage time. So the Gophers needed a get-right game. That's exactly what this was. And I'd say for the final 3.5 quarters, the team played really well after a slow start for an 11 a.m. kick. So that's the takeaway for me, John. The one thing I think they can improve is starting the game faster. They have to, in the tougher games, they can't wait until halfway through the first quarter or into the second quarter to get the offense going. They have to get it going right away. So that's going to be what I think about as something the Gophers need to improve getting into conference play. But what did you think about this performance from the Gophers?
Yeah, I agree. If I'm gonna, again, Minnesota did what they should have done. They took care of business.
Yes.
They blew out a team that was inferior, and that's just the way. And that's how it should have gone. That's what we were hoping for, and it happened. Yeah, I'd like a faster start. I'm not a fan, obviously, of things starting out a little slow and seem a little discombobulated. It doesn't seem like we were in sync right away. But like, I'm not super concerned. I think that's just going to get better as the season goes on. And eventually, obviously, it was clicking on all cylinders, especially by the second half. What I was most impressed with, and what you and I talked about a lot, is to not just get up by a couple scores and salt the game away by running the ball over and over and over again. We wanted to see aggressiveness. We wanted to see us sling the ball all over the field. And we did. Multiple guys got targets, which was great. That was amazing to see. And it got to the point, which again was unlike PJ, that I love to see, was that we also brought in our backups at the end, and we got to see Drake Lindsay. We got to see
Coy Parrish.
I mean, we got to see
an interception and a big punt return.
Yep. So we finally got to see some of these we saw PJ change, which that is the biggest part of this whole thing that I'm taking away from this game. That it's not just that we blew out this opponent and Max Brosmer looked amazing and our receivers looked like we have some people coming up and able to make some plays. And our defense looked solid, but it's the fact that I saw the play calling change. And he didn't stop. And you're the one who, too. We were there together. And you were saying every time they audible, it's usually inside zone run. And how many times
in the whole PJ Fleck tenure, I used to call it out for opposing fans. I would turn to them and just be like, "It's inside zone," and then we'd run it. And they'd be like, "How do you know?" And I was like, "Because every time we audible, it's inside zone."
And how many times were you wrong this weekend?
I was wrong all game.
Yep.
I was wrong all game.
Yep.
Because PJ has switched up and he now audibles to passing plays too, which is not something we did before. And that might seem like a small thing to all of you people out there, but it's a big thing for Gopher fans to see that. PJ hasn't trusted a quarterback this much to change things at the line of scrimmage, even more than Tanner. He trusts Max.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he really and truly trusts Max, and you see that and the dividends that is paying. And it's just so exciting to watch a guy free. Because what if, for those of you who didn't see the game, or even if you watched it on TV, what you probably didn't notice is that the safeties for Rhode Island were literally like they were running out of track blocks, were sprinting into the box on the snap on running downs.
Mm-hmm.
Just sprinting into the box. So they had 9 defenders for 7 versus 7 offensive players consistently.
Yeah.
So there was no way you were going to be able to run the ball against that.
Yeah.
No way. I don't care when you're outnumbered 2 in the box every play. It doesn't matter how good your running back and your offensive line is. You're not going to be able to run the ball. Mm-hmm. So rather than bang his head against the wall, as I've seen so many Gopher coaches, as I've seen Glenn Mason do, as I saw Jerry Kill do, as I saw PJ Fleck do early in his tenure, for most of his tenure, just run the ball over and over and over again, bang his head against the wall. He took what the defense gave them and showed he's willing to do that. And in the post-game presser, he talked about passing the ball to open up the run.
Yeah. Which
is not the way we've ever had it before. It's always been run first to pass. So passing to open up the run, it's exciting, John. That was although it was inferior competition, I think, the Gopher fans probably couldn't be any more excited because PJ showed that malleability and because the Gophers were able to execute that plan on the field. That's why Gopher fans are so excited about a game that seems like maybe not a big deal to everybody else.
Well, how many times have we gone to games and we've seen us play inferior opponents and win by, a few scores, but like knowing that if you would have been more aggressive, you could have ran up the score, you could have gotten more players experience. And that's what we saw today. Usually it's like, a game like that would have probably ended in like, I don't know, a 24-3 victory.
Yeah.
And sure, we had control the entire time, but we just ran the ball. And it was the same old.
And just wore them down because they were smaller and not as talented. Yeah. And just did that.
But we were aggressive and we continued to be even after we were up 31-0 and put in our backups and still threw the ball.
Yeah. Backup threw a touchdown pass.
Yeah. So I'm happy. This needs to, I mean, I know it's not going to stay like this, but like, I'm glad to see that PJ is capable and now we've all seen it. So PJ, don't stop. Please.
Yeah, now you have to keep taking what the defense gives you now.
Yep,
because the teams in the Big Ten are still going to try to stop you to running the ball first.
Exactly.
So you have to be ready to come out and throw the ball to open up that run.
Exactly. No.
So, but I'm excited, man. That was a really fun game, and we got to go to it. So that's always fun. Get to go to a game.
It was great. Awesome time, man. I loved it.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we had the Rutgers Scarlet Knights 49. The Akron Zips 17.
Yeah, there's not a lot to say with this game. Rutgers did exactly what they should have done against this team. Again, and I'll say this: Kyle Monangai. That's it. Incredible. 154 yards. I think over 150 yards, a little bit over in the first half alone.
Wow. And over 200 for the game.
Yeah. So, dude, I mean, he's a freak. Defenses of this caliber have no chance against him.
No.
Ethan did all right. He 14 out of 23, 230 yards, 10-yard average, 3 TDs, 1 interception, 64.2 QBR. So that was good, and that's the way he should. He should look this way against a team like this. Yes. He did have that one interception was very bad, and it was very Ethan-esque. It was very much like, oh, that's what we remember.
Right.
Just bad decision, like
just that on his back foot, just slinging it into double coverage kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, it was pretty egregious. So I was like, okay, well, part of you is still there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but it was over. It was good. Like he did get better. He didn't make those same mistakes. Like he seems to be limiting those than what he used to, more than he used to.
The headset communication helps him a lot, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And by the end of the game, by the fourth quarter, the backup was in. So this was no contest. I know they were able to put 17 points up, but it was in garbage time. It wasn't anything meaningful. The backup QB, I will say, is a little scary. So if Ethan goes down, Rutgers could be in some big trouble.
You could say that about most Big Ten teams.
It's true.
Though.
That is
you could
true.
say that about the Gophers. You could say that about a lot of teams.
That is true. So, but yeah, and then the defense, they were lights out, man. I think they gave up like one big pass play for a touchdown in the third, but it really wasn't much. I wouldn't be too nervous about that. I think that their defense was pretty solid against this Akron team, which they should be.
Yeah.
So.
Impressive performance for Rutgers, who is trying to do big things this year.
Yeah, they got the greatest schedule in the world, man. They can do it. They
really do have the best schedule you'll ever get in the new Big Ten.
Yep.
All right. Next up, we had another upset. Michigan State 20, Spartans 27. The Maryland Terrapins 24.
Mm-hmm.
The difference in this game came down to this, in my opinion, John. Maryland had 2 chances to put the game out of reach. The first time they threw a pick and the next time they missed a field goal. That's devastating. They could have probably won the game by scoring in either case, but in both cases they failed.
Mm-hmm.
For Sparty, Frosh wide receiver Nick Marsh is a problem. He led Michigan State to victory with an absurd performance. Maryland had a lot of chances today, John, but they couldn't capitalize. And Aiden Childs threw 3 picks, and they didn't make him pay for it at all. In fact, Maryland kept bailing Sparty out of their mistakes. And the other difference is that Maryland couldn't run the ball and Sparty could.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that made a big difference in the offensive output. Maryland with just 2.8 yards per carry versus Michigan State's 4.3. Doesn't seem like a big difference, but that's a pretty large difference.
Yeah.
And Nate Carter averaged over 5 yards per carry himself. So that was good to see. And that was the difference in this game. Aiden Childs, man, I understood the hype finally because he made phenomenal plays down the field. He throws a beautiful, amazing deep ball. I mean, that long TD he dropped into Nick Marsh's hands was an absolute dime. He also got a lot of receivers involved, including Marsh, Jerron Glover, Montori Foster, tight end Jack Velling, all of it. Bad news that Childs also threw 3 bad picks, 3 of them. And Maryland could not capitalize enough off of those mistakes. Ty Felton was great for Maryland, 152 yards receiving, and he's amazing. The problem is that Nick Marsh was even better for Sparty with 194 yards receiving.
Yep.
Maryland's O-line, John, is as bad as we thought it was.
Yeah. Yep.
And I blame Billy Edwards for that egregious late pick. But the truth is that he was running for his life out there, just like we saw Leah running for his life out there the last 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
The O-line is worse than it was last year, I think, when it was already a problem. And that's one of the reasons I picked Maryland to finish low in the standings. And I think that's a big reason why they lost today, yesterday, or on Saturday.
Yep. I agree. I mean, and you can even see it reflected in their running game. They only had 86 yards total, and they had 3 guys running the ball, and it was not very impressive at all on the ground. And obviously you saw Michigan State with Nate Carter and K'Ron Lynch Adams, who both performed admirably. I was very impressed by that. That's what I was expecting. If you see that, you saw the offensive line look better with Michigan State, and that's why they were able to win this game. They had a balanced attack. Yes, Aiden Childs threw some picks, but he made the clutch plays when he needed to, and they also had a successful running game that they could lean on to also make some plays and take some pressure off of him. And it was just that's not the case with Maryland. They've got some talented running backs. I think Roman Hemby is talented. I think Nolan Ray is talented. But if you don't have anybody blocking for you, then you can't do anything. It's just not possible. So I think Maryland's still going to win some games here and there, but it's just going to be a race to how many points can, or as the Mike Locksley way is just like trying to just continue to throw deep balls as often as possible and having your very talented wide receivers hopefully come down with it. And that's just the only way they're going to do it. So,
yeah,
but
I'm worried about Maryland. I'm with you.
Yeah, I am. I think every year, or since almost every year, and it's not like a lot of people are giving them a ton of hype, but we hear the same narratives every year that, I don't know. I mean, because everyone looks at their skill players, which is impressive, but
they always have nice skill players for sure.
But they always forget about their line of scrimmage, and that's
what's never up to par. No.
So
Even in their best year. And last year they had the veteran line, and this year with the inexperienced line, it's just really rough.
Yeah. So I think it's going to, it's still early, but I agree. I think that you and I might probably end up being pretty on the nose with Maryland this year.
Yeah, we'll see. Locks has got his work cut out for him for sure.
Yeah.
All right, next up we have the Washington Huskies 30, the Eastern Michigan Eagles
9.
Thank you. It jumped on me.
Yep. This was no contest. Washington probably could have ran up the score even more. They just took out their backups, I think partway, maybe even in the third quarter, for sure the fourth. Washington was never in danger of losing this game. Will Rogers had a great day. 21 for 26, 261 yards, 10-yard average, 4 TDs, 92.4 QBR. I mean,
it's really good.
Yeah. Doesn't get much better than that. Jonah Coleman, solid day, 11 carries for 104 yards, 9.5 average. I mean, 185 yards total with everybody. It was a great game for them. I mean, it was a great day for Washington. This was an inferior opponent. I kind of expected a little bit more from Eastern Michigan because they're always usually a little bit more competitive on defensively.
Yes.
But Will Rogers just was able to do whatever he wanted to do and however he wanted to do it. I mean, he was throwing it to the running back. He was throwing it to the tight ends. He was throwing it to the wide receivers. It was going all over the place, and he was finding success everywhere. Giles Jackson, fun to watch. I think that Jonah Coleman is he's going to be a problem for a lot of teams. I think.
Oh yeah.
Will Rogers is a real deal quarterback, so he's going to be dangerous. We're going to have to see how once they finally get into some tougher competition here, how that all goes. And their defense looked good, but it was against a pretty terrible offense. So I'm really not sure what to say about their defense still at this stage of the game. But Washington is taking care of business. They're doing exactly what they should against teams like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I know they had a slow first quarter, but then Washington really turned it on.
Yeah.
Our Washington friend in our group chat was lamenting the first quarter, but then he felt okay after that.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on, we had the Wisconsin Badgers 27, the South Dakota Coyotes 13.
Mm-hmm.
Wisconsin raced to a 14-0 lead in the first quarter on a Malusi 9-yard touchdown and a 50-yard scoring strike from Van Dyke to CJ Williams. South Dakota cut the lead to 17-13 in the third quarter, but couldn't get any closer. Nathaniel Vakos's 50-yard field goal made it 20-13 late in the third. Malusi's 1-yard touchdown run with 7:35 remaining put the game out of reach at 27-13. That said, John, South Dakota had the ball multiple times with the chance to take the lead or tie the game and just weren't able to do it. This is the second week in a row that Wisconsin struggled for 3+ quarters against a lower division team, in this case, an FCS team. Tyler Van Dyke was pretty good. He was 17 for 27 for 7.9 yards per attempt, 1 TD and no picks. So he was good, but nothing spectacular. Chez Malusi, though, had a tough day running the ball with just 60 yards on 3.8 yards per carry. He did have 2 TDs. Cade Giacomelli actually had the better day rushing the ball for 73 yards on half as many carries as Malusi had, but it's good they had that production because Malusi had so much trouble getting going. At wide receiver, Will Pauling had just 4 catches for 48 yards, so he made some plays but wasn't a huge factor. CJ Williams, Vinny Anthony, Bryson Green all chipped in around 40 to 50-ish yards. But the Badgers only had 385 yards of offense on the day, so Wisconsin ultimately rushed for 4.2 yards per carry against an FCS team. So the running game was not working great. They were somewhat fortunate that South Dakota kept shooting itself in the foot with 9 penalties for 75 yards. We'll say Hunter Wooler, safety, had a nice day on D with 8 tackles and a pass defended. I don't know, man. I thought Wisconsin was going to play better this week, but they didn't. They really didn't.
Yeah.
They played about the same against even worse competition than they faced in week 1. I wanted to see them make more of an emphatic statement going into the Alabama game. But to be fair, Alabama struggled with South Florida for most of the game before blowing it open in the fourth. So that will be an intriguing game between two teams who are not playing their best ball at this time. So we'll have fun previewing that. But yeah, I'm not saying I'm worried about Wisconsin yet, but I am surprised they struggled again for the second week in a row.
I mean, I think there is cause for concern. I'm not going to say that like count them out of being able to have a winning record at the end of the season, but there are some glaring problems with their defensive line in particular, and having teams like South Dakota and Western Michigan basically be able to run the ball on you at will like that. That was insane. That is not a Wisconsin defense that you and I grew up watching year after year and being dominant on the defensive line. This is bizarre. It's like the freaking Twilight Zone in some ways to see this happening and seeing them get gashed by this.
Absolutely gashed.
Charles Pierre Jr. was making incredible plays. Same with Keandre Jones-Logan on South Dakota. Like Keandre Jones-Logan had one carry for 35 yards. One carry, the backup goes in and he breaks off a 35-yard run. Like, that's insane, dude. Like,
that's wild.
And that's unheard of for Wisconsin. And also to have trouble beating these teams into the fourth quarter.
Yeah.
Like, yes, they pull away because they've got the horses to do so, and they have better athletes and they have more depth. But, dude, like, for it to take that long to get things going is a little scary to me. And seeing that defensive line as problematic as that is, like, and to see your running backs not do as well as they should against teams like this.
1 week is one thing, but 2 weeks is a trend,
Yeah.
And to see the struggles in week 2 again, offensively and defensively too, against this team, I just didn't expect it. I expected Wisconsin to be further along, and I really wonder. I have no idea what we're going to get out of this Alabama-Wisconsin game because Alabama has not played their best ball yet either.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe both teams figure it out this week, but otherwise it could be kind of an ugly game. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, Wisconsin took care of business. At the end of the day, they won the game. Credit to them.
Yes.
But there's definitely some things that I'm looking at that are just making me again raise an eyebrow, being like, what's going on? This is not what we're used to seeing. So
yeah,
we'll see.
No, you're exactly right. And I know this is just a review show, but I am excited about that Wisconsin-Alabama game.
Yeah.
I think that's going to be really interesting.
For sure.
All right. We made it to the last game.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the Nebraska Cornhuskers 28, the Colorado Buffaloes 10. Dylan Raiola passed for just 185 yards and a touchdown, but Nebraska turned a smothering defensive performance into a big early lead, and the Cornhuskers went on to win that game convincingly, despite the fact that it devolved into a slog a little bit in the second half. The Huskers sacked Shadur Sanders 5 times and pressured him throughout while winning the final meeting of a 4-game home-and-home series. The Buffaloes had won the first 3. We expected this score, said Matt Rule, and we expected this to be like this. We have a good team. Close quote. The Buffs didn't record a first down until their 5th possession, netted -2 yards in the first quarter, and finished with just 260 yards. Robinson's sack forced a 3-and-out on Colorado's game-opening series, and later he blocked Alejandro Mata's 29-yard field goal try. Buffs also got stuffed on 4th and 1 twice, and Tommy Hill picked off Shadur Sanders' pass from the end zone for an easy 7-yard pick six. The Cornhuskers led 28-0 at half. They did not do much offensively in the second half, but it didn't matter. The stifling Cornhusker defense made sure the final score was never in doubt. Nebraska ran for just 4.3 yards per rush for the game, but that number was much higher in the first half when they were moving the ball than it was in the second half when they weren't moving the ball. Mm-hmm. Raiola didn't do a ton in the passing game, but he was fairly accurate, going 23 for 30 for just 185 yards on 6.2 yards per attempt. He did have the TV. Huskers wisely didn't force Raiola to be a star. They just had him be a complementary piece to their defense and running game. Mm-hmm. On D, John Bullock had a nice day with 5 tackles, 2 TFLs, and a pass defended. And Nash Hutmacher, man, had a sack. And he was his usual self, wrecking the game, living in the backfield, making it impossible for the opposing quarterback and running game to get anything done. Nebraska had a great defensive tackle. Colorado did not. I feel like that was probably the difference in this game.
Yeah.
This Colorado team, John, I was alarmed. They look worse than last year's 4-8 version. Like, all credit to Nebraska, right? Nebraska played great, but they were shockingly bad on the line of scrimmage and looked totally lost most of the time. I genuinely wonder how they're going to do in the Big 12 and whether they can improve and even make a bowl game based on what we saw against Nebraska. I just don't see them making a bowl. They seem like a limited team with terrible talent and depth up front. They can't run the ball, so it's all about Shadur. And because of that, other teams can just tee off and pass rush Shadur every down. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Again, yes, all credit to Nebraska. This is a big game. This is a big win.
It was a big primetime spot. It was a good showing for the program when the lights were on. Yep. Absolutely.
But this Colorado Buffaloes team looks worse than last year, and it seems to be glaringly obvious, especially at the line of scrimmage, man. I mean, it was just no competition anywhere.
No, it was like JV versus varsity.
Absolutely.
I mean, up front, it was really bad in that, especially in that first half.
Oh, for sure. So, and the other thing that I found a little interesting is how, and they didn't need to obviously do a lot of things or be super aggressive on offense, but the whole second half, they didn't score a single point. And that to me,
they sat on it. They sat on that lead,
which was a little odd, but it's okay. I mean, Colorado was clearly not going to be able to do anything, so it really doesn't matter.
I'm sure Matt Rule was thinking the only way they're getting back in this game is if we throw some picks. So I'm just going to run the ball and play it safe, which you and I don't love that. We would like coaches to continue being aggressive, but when you're up 4 touchdowns and your defense is playing that well, you can get away with playing that way for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Especially an opponent that is this bad. I mean, he did the right thing. He got the score up high enough where he knew that this was going to be a convincing win and the fans were going to be absolutely overjoyed and ecstatic, which they are, and they should be.
Yes.
So congratulations, Husker fans. You did exactly what we expected you to do. We both had you guys picked to win this game. But I also think that, I think I had them,
but not by this much. I didn't think. I thought Nebraska was going to win. I didn't think they were going to dominate to this extent. This was. I was impressed with that. That first half, especially, was really impressive.
I thought it was going to be a struggle the first half, and then Nebraska was going to pull away and win by a couple touchdowns.
Yeah,
I didn't see just an utterly dominant display from
they
start
just
to
blitzed
finish.
them. I mean, they just took them by storm. There was Colorado. There was nowhere for them to hide in that first half.
Exactly. So good for you. You did it.
Yeah.
Let's keep it going.
All right. Well, John, yes, congratulations to Nebraska and to all our winners this week. And is there anything else you want to talk about, John? We did all the games before we get out of here.
As always, if you want to find We Live for Saturday, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. You can find us on Twitter at We Live for B1GSat. You can find Mike at Alibaba26. You can find me at Norwegian Gopher. And you can also email us if you want any questions, thoughts, what have you. We Live for Saturday, b1g@gmail.com.
And please look out for the next episode after this. We will be having a preview episode for week 3 coming out in the next day or two. So watch for that as well. And thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see you next time.
Yep.